Alright everybody, it's time for another episode of the Is It Pay to Win series, where we examine monetization systems of popular live service, mobile, and gacha games. For this return, what better game to pick than the latest big release from Project Moon, Limbus Company. Alright, before we begin this episode, it's important to point out the following. Limbus Company was released a few weeks ago at the time of recording this video, and since it has come out, there have already been plans for additional content week by week, a roadmap for the remainder of 2023, and what you're going to see footage-wise may not represent the current version of the game. Also, because this is a monetization review, we're not going to be discussing too much in terms of the core mechanics and systems, unless they are related to the monetization. And as always, those things can change as updates come out, and so on and so on. So, with that said, Limbus Company is technically the third game, or the third major game from Project Moon. Their previous games, Library Runa and Lobotomy Corporation, were some of my favorite. They are very challenging, very interesting story-wise, and they often go to very weird and unusual places for their respective genres. And if Limbus Company is any indicator after the first few weeks of being out, that may certainly hold true. So for people who are new to the formula, Limbus Company is a RPG / of course, gacha style game. We play as Dante, a man with no memory and a clock for a head. He has been recruited by Limbus Company in order to guide 12 sinners to golden bows that are hidden throughout the aptly or mysteriously named city. Now, while Limbus Company is kind of designed to be standalone compared to the previous games, a lot, and I do mean a lot of the details and kind of greater lore, of course, come from this mega franchise that Project Moon has built up over the last few years. Now, the advantage of Limbus Company in this respect is that by dealing with a completely different cast of characters, you're kind of able to see the city and this property from a new light. The 12 sinners that are joining you are all very unique and original in their personalities, mannerisms, and what they bring to the story, with the general structure of the game being that each chapter of the game focuses on kind of one sinner and their respective backgrounds and what's guiding them to work for Limbus. Unlike other gacha-driven games, you're not going to be creating your own in-universe character. Everyone's going to be playing as Dante and viewing the world from their own clock-like perspective. So with that said, we're going to touch briefly on gameplay. As I said, because this is a monetization review, we're not going to be dedicating a lot of time to the gameplay of Limbus Company, and I'm debating if I want to make a new player's guide for it. So the game itself kind of draws similarities to the kind of color or icon matching style games. Of course, with a lot more detail and a lot more things going on under the hood. Battles are fought between either usually 4 or 5 party members, although I'm sure at some point they may put out special content that has either fewer or more characters you can bring in. Each character will come with them different kinds of attacks. Those attacks are categorized by their color or sin, and 1 to 3 different kinds of damage: blunt, piercing, and slashing. Every character and every enemy type in the game will be greatly weak against one, be just average damage against one, and will just like shrug it off like nothing hit them. And the challenge of the game is definitely preparing the right team for the right battle. If enemies hit you with your weakness, they can easily knock you out. And a big point about the combat system of Limbus Company is getting staggers. Every character has kind of a stagger meter or a stagger kind of threshold on their health bar. When they lose enough health, they will become staggered and will not be able to take another turn. If they're staggered and hit, all damage coming in will be considered fatal, or again, their weakness. And if they go down a second stagger threshold during that kind of brief moment of stun, they will then take even more damage. In a lot of cases, a character who is kind of pushed into stagger level 2 is most likely going to die from extra damage outside of boss class enemies. So, as you go through combat in the normal fights, you'll draw a line from left to right, and you'll be picking which attacks are going to square up against which enemies. And there's a system in terms of different colors being stronger or weaker against another, but the game will just flat out tell you, okay, this attack has a chance or a greater chance of winning, this attack has a less chance or a fewer chance. Both characters and your enemies will clash with each other, and combat itself is based on different rolls of a dice and coin flips. For each attack, it comes with a number of coins or number of attacks in that chain. If coins roll heads, it will modify the dice roll that the game does behind the scenes. So it creates a very interesting dynamic of both trying to choose attacks that are going to have a great chance of winning, while also dealing with the RNG of the dice rolls and coin flips. And that's just, again, like the very basics. We'll talk a little bit more about kind of character diversity when we get to the gacha system in a minute. Now, every character, besides having normal attacks, has a super move, limit break, however you want to call it, known as an ego attack. Every character can equip up to 5 of varying levels, and you charge them up by using your normal attacks in combat. Besides that, characters have different defensive moves, and we're not going to spend any time on that, because at the time of me recording this, they are already going to be releasing a combat update to the game along with adding more systems, which in turn will restructure and change how defensive moves work. And like I said at the start, I am very sure this is not going to be the last time there's going to be updates and changes to the combat. Speaking of combat, one of the other aspects is fighting against abnormalities, or kind of the monsters or demons of the Project Moon universe. In these battles, you actually have to pick and choose what attacks will go where, who will intercept what attacks, and it plays very much like Library of Ruina. But you're still having to match colors, and of course the nature of the coin flips and the rolls of the numbers. Now, in terms of general gameplay modes and options, again, this is going to be very interesting to talk about because there's a good chance by the time that this video goes up, this information may not be currently relevant. But the major systems in Limbus Company right now are you have your story campaign, which is up to chapter 3 as of the time of recording this. Each chapter is made up of, again, set missions and then the kind of dungeon boss, which turns the game into kind of a quasi-roguelike, where you'll pick points of interest and nodes on a map, determining what events, enemies you fight, as you're making your way all the way down in the dungeon to reach the chapter boss. And each chapter boss is a unique encounter with its own rules, and this will probably only get more and more crazy as the game goes on. Besides that, you also have a mirror dungeon, which is kind of like its own roguelike mode within this game, where this time you'll pick randomly chosen nodes, you'll get ego gifts, which also act as upgrades or kind of passives in roguelike terms, and you'll once again try to make it through 3 floors to collect goodies and resources. And this game does have quite a bit in terms of resource gathering and how it's tied to character progression and the gacha system. Which, with that said, I think that's a good segue into talking about how the gacha and character progression work, and we'll start with the gacha system. So, Future Josh should be putting up somewhere on the screen right now what are the drop rates for kind of the main things you're going to be pulling for. And those are going to be 3-star characters and ego weapons or ego attacks. What's very interesting about Limbus Company, and it's a very different take that we normally see from gacha games, is that this is not a gacha game where you're going to be pulling for different characters. This is not like Arknights where every month or two some new person joins Rhodes Island and it's going to be part of your crew for the remainder of the game if you pull on their banner. Instead, what the game does and kind of keeps within the universe is that the bus that you're on, this magical, wonderful bus that also eats people, I may have forgot I left that one out earlier, is that it allows you to peer into multiverse versions of the characters. Each version of the character is kind of like an alternate take, or if they would have gone a different route in life. So maybe one character joins another corp. Maybe this character goes into a military role or become a detective. And this becomes kind of like your different characters. So you're rolling for identities for each of the 12 characters. And again, the identities themselves will go between 0 or 1 and 3 stars. You will get the 1-star version of all the characters 100% free. They are your base versions. They will be upgraded for free as well as you go through the story. You won't get 2 and 3 stars. That's when you roll on the banners. And you'll be using the gacha currency Lunacy to get that. Now, to earn Lunacy in Limbus Company, you can get it either from completing enough levels in a chapter, get it from the game's Battle Pass, and we'll talk more about the Battle Pass after this. And of course, if there's any issues or problems, Project Moon may give it to you for free. However, as another big point about updating, one of the updates that's going to be coming up by the time you're watching this is that the mirror dungeons I mentioned a few minutes ago will allow you to earn free Lunacy a week. And I believe the metric that people have mined or have extrapolated is that you'll be able to get 10 pool every 3 weeks if you do the mirror dungeons or your cap of 3 mirror dungeons a week. Now, in terms of how the different identities fare, and again, how this works with the monetization, we'll talk about that when we kind of get to the verdict section of this video. The other thing that you'll be rolling for again are the ego attacks, and this is where the game is a little bit different. The ego attacks have a lesser drop chance than the 3 stars in any banner. And here's where it gets a little tricky. Ego attacks are unique. Once you pull one, that is it. It is taken permanently out of the gacha system. You will not get any more than that. With the different identities, however, if you pull duplicates of ones that you already have, you will gain character-specific ego shards, which this is kind of like the milling currency, that when you get enough, you'll be able to buy or trade in for a free 2, 3-star, or ego attack for that respective character. And that, of course, is always subject to change. They may update things as things go along. But what makes it very interesting is that if you are someone who, let's say, gets really lucky or whales enough to pull every currently available ego attack in the game, it will actually make it easier for you to then pull more 3-star characters, because the ego attacks will then be taken out of the possible drop chance until more, of course, added in, which when that happens, you'll then have a super high chance when you get an ego pool to get those new characters or those new ego attacks. Now, we'll talk again more about how this relates to game balance and so on later on. With that said, let's talk about the Battle Pass, because this is a very interesting monetization aspect of Limbus Company. For those of you who aren't familiar with the term, a Battle Pass is basically a collection of rewards tied to various objectives. Complete the objectives, you'll fill up your Battle Pass experience and level up, which unlocks a new rank and various goodies. There is the free Battle Pass, which everyone gets without having to spend, and then the kind of premium Battle Pass, which in this game I think it's like $10.99 USD for it. And everything in terms of kind of the daily and weekly rotation of quests and stuff to do in Limbus Company is 100% tied to the Battle Pass. As of right now, you do not collect daily or weekly experience as you would in other gacha or mobile games. Instead, you complete objective, it all goes to the Battle Pass. And the Battle Pass, especially on the premium side, has quite a lot of goodies to get. You'll get exclusive ego attacks, you'll even get free 10 pools, more resources, and generally speaking, if you're interested in playing Limbus Company for the long haul, I would highly recommend getting it, as it's basically an 80-day Battle Pass, although now it's far less than that, considering the game's been out for a few weeks. And each Battle Pass is basically tied to a season. So right now we're in Season 1. When that ends, we'll move into Season 2. There'll be more ego weapons, more character identities, more stuff, and you get the picture. So this is definitely where Project Moon, I feel, is really trying to, I guess, focus the monetization on. There's, of course, you can spend money to buy monthly Lunacy bundles, weekly resources, that kind of thing. And of course, the first time you buy it, you get the double up reward for it. But all in all, I would definitely recommend that if you do want to play this game seriously, or you just really want to support Limbus and Project Moon, the Battle Pass is definitely one of the better ones that I've seen. Now, before we take our break, one last point that I want to touch on, that is how progression works in Limbus Company. Progression in the game is tied to two things: an identity's level and the kind of rank of said identity. As I said a few minutes ago, you will get fully ranked up versions of all the 1-star characters or their base identities completely free. That will all unlock once you finish Chapter 2 of the story. What you get for ranking up is very important. Each character will start with 2 attacks, as we said. The first time you rank up, you will unlock a kind of passive ability. Each character gets a passive that can activate as you're matching the respective sin colors during a round or during a battle. Keep ranking them up to rank 3, and you will unlock a 3rd attack and a support skill that they can trigger just as long as they're part of your team and they're not even in the battle. And that becomes a major point during dungeon play. But the 3rd attack is a very huge deal for identities. This not only gives them a greater chance of having more diverse attacks you can pick from during a combat or during each turn, but the 3rd attack is oftentimes like the capper, or the thing that ties that specific build or what that identity can do together. For instance, a 3-star Gregor, who was the first banner, who's basically like a combination of the fly there, his 3rd skill is a 4 different attack, just like piercing one, that does increase damage when enemies are inflicted by the debuff that his other skills can do. And every time you rank up, and again the rank up goes up to 3, the other skills will get enhanced. They may add additional benefits, the benefits on them may get changed or better, and it's just again a very beneficial thing. So beneficial that in almost any case, it is better to have a lower rarity character who is fully ranked up rather than a 3-star character who is only still on rank 1. That becomes a big point during some of the game's difficulty spikes, or shall I say difficulty nails, that you'll get to in Chapter 3. To rank up personalities and ego attacks, you'll need Thread. And again, Thread will become a resource that can be farmable each week in an upcoming update. With all that said, again, there's a lot more to the combat, team compositions, and the battling that is way beyond the scope of a monetization review. So again, if you'd like me to do a new player's guide on this, let me know in the comments down below. We're going to take a quick break and we're going to talk more about how the monetization ties in with the gameplay and the current balance of the game next. But as always, if you're interested in my thoughts on design, then be sure to check out my game design books. For entry-level students, we have 20 Essential Games to Study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with more coming soon. Welcome back. So, it's time to render a verdict on Limbus Company's monetization. Is it pay to win? And my answer for at least right now, with the game still a few weeks old, is no. That you do not necessarily need the higher characters or the higher ego attacks in order to stand a chance against the game's content. I should know this, as for the majority of Chapter 3, I just used the standard identities, and the only time I had a 3-star was during the final battle. It was 1 3-star and the rest 1-stars. And it was a hard fight, but I was able to do it. So it's time to talk a little bit more about what you're actually getting in terms of character design, character balance with the Gacha system. As I said in the last part, character identities are ranked between 1 and 3. The 3-star ranked characters, the 3-star versions, they do come with higher base stats to their attack and defensive abilities. The main thing that you're getting with the higher variants is more interesting attacks and more specialized attacks. In the previous part, I mentioned, of course, 3-star Gregor, or G-Corp Gregor, and his whole thing is that he gains a lot of lifesteal when his attacks win or win clashes or they win the coin flip. So it gives him far greater survivability compared to his other versions. So each one of the different, I guess, like identity themes, or kind of like mirrorverse or alternate multiverse versions of these characters, has a kind of different theming or gimmick to them. One of them has a very heavy emphasis on bleed and slash based damage. Another one, W Corp, which is a very big kind of plot point in Library of Ruina. Their whole thing is building charge. That some of their attacks will gain you charge stacks, and other attacks will kind of spend those charges to enhance or give them new elements. And it's again another very interesting aspect behind them. So in Limbus Company, you're not necessarily pulling directly for power. You are pulling for a specific utility or additional options in your toolbox. It is very much akin to, I would say, Arknights in this respect. Arknights is a game that has a very huge, diverse offering of different gameplay mechanics and abilities spread throughout 6 stars. And in that game, again, the 3 and 4 star versions of those respective classes can still do the job compared to their 5 and 6 star counterparts. It's just that the 5 and 6 star versions will often come with greater utility and more kind of use out of them compared to just their standard role. And even with that said, while people like to joke about characters like Silver Ash and Surtur being like easy win or just incredibly useful characters, there's no one character in Arknights that can truly just trivialize or break the entire game. Although I've heard some people debate that Ling can do that as well. And the same goes for Limbus Company. If you take an entire crew of 3-star, what are considered the top tier characters into a battle in this game, and they are completely the wrong characters for it, they are going to get shut down really hard. Now, a lot of that, again, comes back to the stagger system. When a character gets staggered, all damage they take is multiplied. And if that happens during one of the boss's super attacks, you are in very big trouble. And a lot of the balance and design of Limbus Company is around proper team composition. As I said in the last part, the game starts off very easy. Chapter 1, you can pretty much play, I think, blindfolded. And unless your finger just accidentally hits the wrong thing or you hold your phone upside down, you can probably win most of the fights in that chapter. Chapter 2 is when things hit back a little bit, and then Chapter 3 is when the difficulty spike gets nailed in hard. And part of the reason for that is that the enemies in Chapter 3 are purposely designed to have completely opposite attack types and resistances compared to the enemies you fought in Chapters 1 and 2. So if you've only leveled up the people who were good in Chapter 1 and 2, Chapter 3 is going to be in for a rude awakening. Now, as I said, being able to rank up identities is more important than leveling them to a certain extent. It is better, again, to have the rank ups, and then the level ups come second, as opposed to vice versa. And like I said, a fully ranked up identity is oftentimes worth more and does more compared to a higher rank but less ranked up version of it. So with the ego attacks, this is where it gets interesting. As of right now, the game only has up to 3 of kind of the 5 power levels of ego attacks in the game. When you use an ego attack, it changes a character's resistance to the various sin colors. So this does become a big point, because we don't know exactly what does a level 5 ego attack going to give you in terms of resistances. Is it just going to make your character super durable against anything? Again, we don't know. But as I said in the last part, I am highly confident that Project Moon will never release a character identity that is just immune to all or highly resistant to all damage types. That's not their style. They want to make you work for the story content and the gameplay. And as I said a few minutes ago, as of right now, you can get through the story content with the base ego or base identities. If I can do it with a very haphazard, and I can tell you, not perfectly optimized team for that fight, then I'm sure you can do it as well. And again, with the identities, rolling or getting them is simply going to give you more options. However, with new content coming and the game's supposed kind of Season 1 endgame or late game content, we will have to wait and see just how really effective the 12 base identities are against that versus their 2 and 3 star counterparts. Someday I will get Moraka Sinclair, who's the one character I want, and I've yet to pull him yet. Also, the level cap is quite low in Limbus Company. It is set at level 30. Now, from looking at the UI and just theory crafting in my head, I am pretty sure that level cap's going to be raised in the future. Because it seems like 30 may be like too low for an RPG style game like this. And again, we'll have to wait and see just how easy it will be once the updates and changes to the different dungeons and additional modes are added in. With that said, another exercise that I like to do for these monetization reviews is I like to theory craft. What does spending money get you in these games? In some games, money is just almost a direct tie to time. I spend $100, that could be 2 weeks of content, a month of skipping ahead. Again, it depends on the luck and what that game is. So with Limbus Company, let's say for some strange reason I decide to say, you know what, here's $1,000 of my money, Project Moon, what do I get for it? And what you get for it in this game is, well, you're not really going to be kind of breaking the game with your wallet. If you get a lot of money or you spend a lot of money in this game, you will always get, or you'll obviously get access to the Battle Pass. You'll get a ton of summoning currency. If you want to buy those additional packs, you'll get more resources, which will allow you to speed through kind of the grinding aspect of it. But at the end of the day, because this is such a gameplay-centric title, you're not really going to be able to fast forward through it. As I said, there are a lot of people who tried using the wrong character identities, who weren't paying attention, who brought in the kind of God tier or S tier identities that they pulled from the Gacha, and they got shut down. And even with, again, the base identities, I was able to beat the entire Chapter 3, with, again, having just one 3-star that I used for the final fight. And what that means is that money in this game is really not going to get you far. And that is both a good and a bad thing in a very weird way. It's good that Limbus Company is very free-to-play friendly right now. Again, things can change, modes can be added in, content can be rebalanced, but for right now, your 12 1-star sinners can really do a job, especially when you have them fully ranked up after Chapter 2. And with that said, just pulling for more identities, again, it doesn't really directly translate to power because you need to rank them up. And like, as for myself, like, with the pulls that I've done, I got several 3-star identities, but I could only really use one for the final chapter. I have the 3-star Marisol from his banner. I got both banner characters on single 10 pulls, which I know all of you will hate me. But there's really isn't a necessity to pull for characters or go for the gacha as much compared to other live service and mobile games. One of the games I was trying out was just kind of like an idle RPG. I think it was Memento Mori. In that game, money is just directly translated into time. If I spend $1,000, I could probably get 4 to 5 months of progress. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. In this game, money is not really going to get you all that far. If you are bad at the combat or you're not figuring out, no 3-star identity is going to save you, or no ego attack as well. So with everything said, it's time to talk about problems, and let's start with what I just said a few minutes ago, that it's both good and bad that Limbus Company is very free-to-play friendly right now. The bad side of it is that right now, there is certainly a lack of meaningful and varied content. And I do think part of this comes from Project Moon's kind of inexperience when it comes to live service. They've, of course, certainly earned their chops with continued and rapid development doing Live Aruna in early access. Well, you see, there's a difference between early access and live service. In a live service game, you need to hit the ground running. You need to make sure that short, mid, and long-term content, all your monetization systems, all your additional gameplay modes are either in, or you at least have the foundation already brewing in them. In Limbus Company, when it was released, there is no endgame. I mean, there is literally nothing else to do once you complete the 3 chapters. And we don't know right now how many chapters will actually be out for the game. The 2023 roadmap has it saying that chapters 4 and 5 will all be out by the end of this year. But again, it's unknown how many more will come after that. And while they have been doing weekly updates, and the weekly updates have been really well received in terms of fixing issues, adding in new content, rebalancing stuff, it still doesn't erase the fact that the first few weeks of this game, it is kind of lacking in terms of a live service. Most live service games, we could say, have maybe 1 to maybe pushing it 3 months of kind of a grace period. That if you aren't proving to your consumers that there's enough content or more stuff is coming, people are going to leave and they're not going to come back. And it's going to be very interesting, as both a fan and someone who studies game design, to see where Limbus Company is going to be at in 6 months' time. Because, again, there's a very good chance that the stuff that I'm talking about right now, if you're watching this in the future, may not even be relevant. Heck, the whole point about if this is free to play or pay to win may be completely different in 6 months or a year from now. We just don't know. But it still doesn't erase the fact that the game sorely lacked content at its release. Also, there are numerous bugs in this game. Playing this on PC is really fine. Playing it on mobile is a bit of a wishy-washy, between the game having horrible frame rate loss to outright crashing. Some people have been reporting several soft lock and bricking issues. Sometimes the account purchases didn't go through. Sometimes people got bonus rewards without doing anything. It's definitely not have been or hasn't been a very stable or easy launch for the game. And Project Moon has been giving a lot of rewards and apologies for it. But like we said, it's not what you want to show, especially to a new consumer or to someone who's not familiar with the game, all these issues with it. I've had many crashes playing this on Android, and I can tell you that when I beat Chapter 3, I was playing it on PC because I did not want an eco attack to crash the game and make me lose all my progress in that final boss. But again, this stuff can be fixed, it can be ironed out, but it does not help, again, that kind of first month or early impressions of the game. And while the roadmap is nice, I do hope that it happens sooner than later, that kind of all the, I guess, basic parts of Limbus Company will be in this game. Again, all the means to collect resources, all the daily and weekly stuff, something that will kind of keep people engaged while they wait for major events, new chapter announcements, etc., etc. And there is definitely positive signs that that stuff is coming. Again, if you look at the development of Live Aruna, it went a huge way from week 1 of early access to where the game was at 1.0. And I am very sure that for anyone who says that this game is simple or is too easy, that Project Moon probably has some very challenging stuff they're going to be cooking up that will be coming at some point in the future. So with everything said, I guess for my final thoughts, I really enjoy Limbus Company. I'm also a huge fan of Arknight, so I do like these kinds of single-player, more gameplay-driven mobile live service games compared to the ones that are more heavily focused on monetization. If you're looking for a mobile game that is very easy to play, or one where you can just kind of pay your way to victory, this is not the game for you. And if you are a fan of Arknights, or again, some of the more complicated live service games looking for another one to play, I highly recommend Limbus Company like that. If you are completely new to Project Moon, the City property, and so on, I don't necessarily know this is going to be the best game to check out. Library of Ruina, I think, still holds up really well, and you can beat Library of Ruina. That should be all the training and tutelage you'll need to do a lot in Limbus Company. But again, things can of course change, onboarding can be improved. I didn't want to mention too much about, again, general balancing or UI UX, because those things have been updated, and I'm sure they'll be updated even more as the game goes on. So with that said, thank you everybody for watching this episode of Is It Pay to Win? Again, if you'd like me to do a new player's guide for Limbus Company, let me know. If you're new, do the YouTube stuff with bell ringing, liking, and subscribing and all that. Check out our Discord and Patreon, link down below, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where you examine the art and science of games.